Hello again. Today, we're tackling a familiar subject, the often uncritical celebration of dog ownership. Many argue that dogs provide unconditional love, companionship, and even improve physical and mental health. These kinds of claims are often asserted, but what isn't mentioned is that things like dogs providing companionship or improving mental health only apply, if they apply at all, to people who actually want to be around dogs. Claims like dogs providing unconditional love or improving physical health are unsubstantiated and outright false. These are only a few examples, and the claims themselves are not compelling. That's what's most important. Moreover, they often overshadow the significant downsides, which are frequently ignored or minimized. If we were to move beyond simplistic and disingenuous arguments and engage in a mature, honest discussion about the reality of dog ownership, we would quickly find that there's just no good argument in favor of it. I have yet to encounter a single argument in favor of the continued propagation of dog culture and dog ownership, and everything they entail. So one of the things they do is equivocation. This is when you use the same word to mean different things and switch back and forth. But what they're really engaging in is a conflation of concepts. Take this ridiculous post from Happy Pets Club, for instance.
I adopted my child blind. He may be blind, but he is not different than another dog.
Do you see what they did there? They are obviously referring to a dog, but the way they start the sentence off, if you were not looking at this image, you might think they're talking about their child, as in one of their actual children, their human offspring, not an animal from another species. They are talking about a dog, which is not a child, or their child, or anybody's child. Yet they start out talking about one thing and very quickly switch to another. Now, this is not necessarily an argument that's presented in favor of dog ownership, but this deliberate conflation of concepts and categories is regularly used to garner sympathy for dogs, to put them on par with humans, in order to push the idea that the existence of dogs within human society is just as valid as our own, which, to be very clear, it most assuredly is not. They also use various types of appeals. For example, the following: appeal to authority. Now really, this is a logical fallacy where someone uses the opinion of an authority figure to support a claim without providing any evidence. But one thing I've noticed dog nutters will do at times is assert that unless I am a veterinarian or some kind of alleged dog expert, I cannot talk about dogs the way I do, or something. Honestly, I'm not sure what they're implying, since my credentials or lack thereof have absolutely nothing to do with how obvious it is that dogs cause various problems for society. It would be like saying that, unless I am an entomologist, I can't conclude that people shouldn't deliberately introduce bed bugs and cockroaches into neighborhoods or apartment dwellings. Of course, people are actually doing this with dogs, and not those insects, but it would be the same bad logic. Similarly, I don't need to be a herpetologist or a reptile behavior expert of some kind to be able to conclude that people shouldn't bring Komodo dragons or venomous snakes into public locations, the way people do with dogs, whether they are leashed or allegedly trained or not. Then, there is the appeal to ignorance. This is when someone uses a lack of evidence as evidence of something. So, for example, unicorns exist because there is no evidence that they don't. In the context of bad defenses of dog ownership, a dog defender may respond to the accurate claim that there's no proof that dogs love their owners by claiming there's no proof they don't. Next, there's the appeal to popularity. This one is fairly straightforward. I can't recall exactly how many times I've been told that I'm wrong simply because more people like dogs or support their ownership than don't. Obviously, whether a specific practice is a good one cannot be determined by mass appeal. Along similar lines, we have the appeal to tradition or appeal to common practice. In the context of arguments against the anti-dog movement, or perhaps in favor of the continued presence of dogs in society and so forth, This manifests in the form of some nutter invoking the pop history of the dog. This is where they will quickly tell us that dogs and humans have supposedly been in some near-eternal symbiotic relationship or some shit. What they fail to account for is the fact that whatever our ancient ancestors were supposedly doing according to this theory, it has no bearing on the state of affairs in the world today. In other words, the social and technological context has changed significantly. Most people who are alive today are neither farmers nor hunters, and we don't even need dogs for these purposes today. Similarly, a dog apologist may even bring up working dogs, such as those used to pull sleds sometimes, when we're clearly talking about what a terrible impact the widespread practice of pet keeping has, particularly in the city. Working dogs exclusive to more isolated areas aren't exactly the same as pet dogs, but they will conflate these concepts. And this is not to suggest that all working dogs are valid, or as useful or necessary as dog defenders assert, but I will not go into this at any great length here, as I have addressed this extensively in previous videos. Another kind of appeal they will try is an appeal to anecdotal evidence. So for instance, this would be the same as saying,
"If dogs are dangerous, then why hasn't my sister's dog attacked anybody?"
Many soldiers survive wars, but that speaks not at all to the risks and dangers of wars. Once again, this is purely anecdotal. It's like a person saying they haven't had an accident while driving impaired. Therefore, driving while under the influence is perfectly safe. In reality, dog ownership is a gamble and an imposition, and these people are risking other people's lives by owning these loud, intrusive, and violent waste producers. I've made a few videos before where I've endeavored to counter some of the more common, yet deeply flawed, defenses of dog ownership, and here I will continue to show just how weak and flawed all of their arguments and tactics are. Most of them are very transparent to any honest or good-thinking person. This is a challenge to the mass of people, to consider the full picture before blindly defending this pervasive social bane. The dog apologist will forego rational engagement and will instead engage in a number of disingenuous tricks and tactics. One thing we see fairly often is gaslighting. Gaslighting is a psychological manipulation technique that involves convincing someone that their reality is untrue. It's a form of emotional abuse that can cause people to question their own sanity, instincts, and feelings. This is very sinister, and we get a lot of this from dog cultists. So for example, anytime they try to tell you that the dog problem isn't nearly as bad as you know it actually is, that would be a form of gaslighting. They may even tell you that dogs aren't a problem at all. One dog apologist actually told me I imagine dog barking. When they imply that you must have done something to provoke a dog's unwarranted aggression, or that you somehow deserve the attack or inconvenience caused by the dog. That would be another example. I was met with a lot of this on my video titled, "The More Dogs I Encounter, the More I Hate All Dogs." So for instance, this comment here. Notice how this cretin starts equivocating almost immediately. He knows I am only talking about dogs, yet he starts bringing up other animals. He claims he's only been hurt by the animals he's been around if he was doing something to them, and later he says that dogs can detect hostility. So he's not only talking about something completely different, he's implying that I must have been doing something to the menacing dogs I was describing in my video, and falsely implies that I must have been hostile in some way, even though literally all I was doing at those apartment complexes where I lived was walking calmly and slowly from point A to point B. For instance, going from my building to the mailroom or the front gate. There were also shitty and irrelevant comments like this one. Like I said, we get this sort of thing from dog worshippers a lot. And then there are all the logical fallacies they constantly employ, often, evidently, without even realizing that this is what they are doing. I won't spend too much time on these, and I won't cover all of them. And I even did a video on 5 of the more common fallacies used by dog defenders. But these do include things like ad hominem attack, which is basically an insult instead of an argument. They may even try to attack your character and things of this nature, instead of presenting an actual argument, since there is no defense of dog ownership. In other words, this is where you insult someone and use that instead of an argument. There's always the popular strawman attack. This is where they will present a weaker version of their opponent's argument and attack that instead of their actual position. On rare occasions, we may even see things like this. The causal fallacy. This is also known as a false cause. It is a logical error that occurs when someone incorrectly assumes that one thing caused another. One of the most ridiculous things about dog culture is the sheer number of ridiculous myths and misconceptions there are about dogs. Again, I won't go over them here, however I have covered these elsewhere. Perhaps the most common is the red herring logical fallacy, which is basically when something is brought up as a distraction and to change the topic from dogs to something else entirely. There's always the false dichotomy as well. For example, she loves me or she hates me. This is a false dilemma. She might be indifferent. The entire owner or the dog thing results from this kind of limited, binary thinking as well. In reality, both are a problem, and dogs are dangerous and a nuisance with and without owners. Poor defenses and shit arguments abound. Dog defenders don't seem to understand that dogs are predators, or that you cannot train genetics out of selectively bred dogs. They constantly demonstrate that they can't for the life of them comprehend that we are interested in preventing dog attacks from happening at all, rather than responding to them after they already occur. They tell us that the world's a dangerous place, and that lots of things cause harm. This is because they cannot deny the reality that dogs are a direct source of much needless harm in the world. They may bring up guns or other things, failing to recognize that guns require a user to be dangerous. Dogs do not. Dogs are, again, dangerous with and without owners, and a dog running at large is far more dangerous than a firearm that's just sitting on a sidewalk. And it's not as if these people have spent weeks researching the environmental impact of dog ownership. I could go on, and honestly, something I get out of running this channel is speaking to reasonable people who have not been brainwashed by the dog cult. And yes, the general attitude towards dogs has many striking parallels to cult behavior. Perhaps a video topic for another time.
If you want to support this content and see more of it, please like and subscribe. If you hate this content and want to fight for weird predator parasites,